Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, May 22nd, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, guys, let you know that this is a family-friendly podcast, although sometimes language might be a little but we do try our best, and sometimes we may show things of a graphic nature, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So let's go ahead and get into it, guys. We know it's the weekend. We know we've made it. But surprising things are coming from the Biden administration, although we keep on saying surprising, but this one was actually interesting. I'm going to actually start off with this one, where, of course, Biden actually does take a turn from previous administrations about the freedom of the journalistic press, if you will. Check it out.
President Biden telling our Caitlin Collins it is, quote, simply wrong for the government to seize the emails or phone records of reporters. It comes after CNN learned the Trump administration's Justice Department secretly obtained phone and email records of our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr.
Should the government be seizing reporters' phone records and emails, and would you prevent your Justice Department from doing that?
Only yours, but beyond yours, they prevent no.
But
honestly,
we
should absolutely, positively, it's wrong. It's simply wrong.
So you won't let your Justice Department do that?
I will not let that happen.
And Caitlin Collins is now out front at the White House. So, Caitlin, a clear message from President Biden that he does not believe that this is okay, ever.
No, and Aaron, this is a huge break from not just his predecessor in former President Trump, but also the president he served under as vice president, former President Obama, whose administration also went after reporters' phone records. But it's notable because the White House had been asked about this at the briefing earlier today. They had not made this announcement that this is going to be a new policy where they are not going to seize the records of reporters secretly, whether it's phone or email, which of course is what we now know happened under the Trump administration's Justice Department to our colleague Barbara Starr, but also 3 reporters from the Washington Post. And that was related to records from 2017. We know it was approved, we believe, under Attorney General Bill Barr, the former Attorney General, of course, in the later days of the Trump administration. But Aaron, this is notable because it is a huge break from how the Justice Department had been operating before. And
not to actually cut that off, but it's true. It's amazing that, of course, going with Joe is trying to go for full transparency. He is sitting there saying that the freedom of the press is exactly what it is, that it should be allowed to report everything on the administration without being looked over like Big Brother. So it's a little bit odd. It is odd that a president, I mean, don't get me wrong, because a lot of people going, this happened on the Obama administration? Yes, although they didn't really get into specifics why it happened on the Obama administration. But keep in mind, at the time, we were still actually fighting 2 different wars. Republicans were basically trying to get rid of a first black man out of the White House. And at the same time, he was the first African-American president. He was already enough pressure. So yes, there had to be a little bit more scrutiny than most folks. But then again, I don't blame Obama for that. But yes, Biden is coming off the heels of saying, yes, we won't track reporters because, if you say bad things about us, 9 times out of 10, we probably deserve it. So again, I just thought that was kind of interesting that Biden is trying to go that route. Now, again, even though we're still sticking with a little bit of Congress today, let's be honest. Republicans, y'all guys have no excuses that you outed out the one person who actually did the right thing, Liz Cheney, and was impeaching your former President Trump, who still run the Republican Party, by the way. But yet you have this crazy person who is still in office and said something so outlandish that it just has to be repeated by her own words.
Congresswoman actually compares the mask mandate in the House to the Holocaust.
You know, we can look back in a time in history where people were told to wear a gold star, and they were definitely treated like second-class citizens, so much so that they were put in trains and taken to gas chambers in Nazi Germany. And this is exactly the type of abuse that Nancy Pelosi is talking about.
I mean, I don't like to call people names, but that's outrageous. Comparing mask wearing to Jews being sent to the gas chamber. How low can she go?
Not low enough. Not low enough. And I'm going to tell you why not low enough. Because keep in mind, I have talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I have sat there and said many a times that how, number one, she got elected. Well, then again, she was elected by idiots in Georgia. Number two, how she has not been removed from her many violations, running up against fellow politicians, spouting QAnon conspiracies, basically trying to run up on people. She ran up on AOC last week, but she didn't run up on that black politician. Keep in mind, she picks and chooses who she runs up on, but she'll never run up on a black politician. I'm just being honest. And now this. The mask mandate, because for all those that don't know, Speaker Nancy Pelosi has turned around and sat there and said she's going to keep the mask mandate on for Congress, which again is a smart move, just because only 60, I think they said last week only 65% of the United States adults have at least received one shot of the COVID-19 vaccine. So we're not fully vaccinated yet. So I don't blame Nancy Pelosi, because let's be honest, almost everybody, within the exception of maybe 40 to 45 people in Congress, especially in the House and the Senate, are under the age of 38. A lot of them are way older than that. So of course, the older you are, the more that the more of a chance that you could actually receive the COVID-19 virus. So it makes sense. However, there are some people in Congress, Republicans, who believe that we shouldn't have a mask mandate because, they luckily never got sick, which is easy for them to say, mind you. It's easy for them to say they never got sick, just because the simple fact of the matter is, well, let's be honest, politicians have the greatest health care in the world. So it's just the craziness that Marjorie Taylor Greene has decided to sit there and say that, oh, well, us having a mask mandate is similar to Jews being prosecuted in the Holocaust. Who in the blue hell? I was like, I'm not surprised. I'm not. Because they let her, her being Republican, being Republicans, let her slide on everything. That's why you want to know why she's so bold that she can say all this stuff? Because nobody is enforcing penalties upon her. Nobody. Because let's be honest, because the checks and balances that we have in Congress, Democrats can't get rid of her. They can't. They can strip her of her responsibilities as far as being on committees and budget things, but they cannot forcefully remove her from Congress. So only the House Republicans can do that. And trust me, Kevin McCarthy is too busy kissing up Trump's behind before he can do anything about Marjorie Taylor Greene, because he has to get her approval. He has to get his approval first. Trust and believe, just because Trump isn't there anymore, you best believe he is still controlling that party. And you can obviously tell, because only in the Republican Party would you get rid of somebody who has common sense. You can only get rid of somebody who has common sense, but you'll keep the person who literally and figuratively sounds crazy. Crazy. But they'll never get rid of her. Because why? She is a lightning rod because there are so many more out there that think exactly the way she does. And that alone is effing scary. Um, but moving right along, guys, this other video has come out, like I said before. Um, the one thing I just don't get is that yes, the COVID-19 hate bill was signed by Biden this week. The COVID-19 hate bill, for all those who don't know, was for helping to reduce the attacks on Asian Americans. Just because, let's be honest, it does have mostly to do with Trump. That he, called them the Kung Flu, said the virus was from China, and not just Chinese, but Japanese, and pretty much everybody got looped into that because they always, you can sit there, you all look alike, but it doesn't matter. It did cause a lot of a rise of Asian American attacks on U.S. soil. That being said, however, yes, a bill was signed in to basically make that a hate crime, things of that nature. However, I cannot say as a black person, where's our bill? That's the main thing I keep asking the whole entire time. Where's our bill? Especially when you see stories like this.
Police video out tonight showing a black man in Louisiana struggling to stay alive as police restrained him, providing new details of the confrontation we first told you about 2 nights ago. Our Blaine Alexander tells us more.
Get on the ground, taser. Tonight, a graphic new look at police body camera video that shows the final moments of Ronald Green's life. The video, obtained, edited, and released by the Associated Press, shows a handcuffed Green trying repeatedly to roll onto his side.
Don't you turn over, you lay on your belly.
At one point, an officer is seen forcing Green down with his shoe.
Is that consistent with law enforcement training?
No, it's not. So the goal is always to get the subject under control. Officers have a responsibility to do that, but they also have a responsibility to roll those persons over or get them up on their feet.
The incident happened in May 2019 after Green led Louisiana State Police on a high-speed chase. In the video, you see and hear officers repeatedly punch Green, tase him, and at one point drag him.
And I beat the ever-living out of him, choked him, and everything else trying to get him under control.
Tonight, Louisiana State Police announced the department will release all body camera video. Green's family calls it a cover-up, saying they were initially told he died in a car crash. This newly public autopsy report does not list a manner of death.
That is a common tactic for stonewalling by law enforcement officers if you don't provide the narrative.
The incident is now under federal investigation. Blaine Alexander, NBC.
So again, this was a story from 2 years ago. I mean, this is just something that happened 2 years ago that is just now being released. The man led him on a high-speed chase, but did he deserve to be punched? Did he deserve to be held down? Did he deserve to be shocked and tased? No, he didn't. Because we expect our officers, supposedly, and this is the thing they always sit there and say, we expect our officers to supposedly have better judgment. Have better judgment. We supposedly expect them to, right? For all of us who have been on the other side or basically are just minorities here, we know differently. We know differently for the simple fact of the matter, guys, that, again, they said a federal investigation is underway. 2 years later, are we going to see officers brought to justice? Are we going to see departments change? Are we going to see the way they do things? No, because you want to know why. And I say this because we're already dealing with 4 different cases out there. We still have Ahmaud Arbery, who the people that murdered him are now still being brought up on hate crimes, still pleading not guilty, even though they hunted and tracked this young man. We still have the case of George Floyd. Yes, Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all charges, but keep in mind, you still got 3 other people out there who was also part of that are still awaiting trial. And then, we could keep going down the list, but we can only say in most recent history that 2 officers were tried and convicted. But let's be honest, they got Amber Geiger got 10 years for killing Botham Jean. 10 years. You're sitting there telling me her story was so crazy that she only got 10 years? So you can understand that for a lot of people, mostly minorities, police reform needs to happen. But it's always amazing whenever we say police reform, stuff like this happens.
Proposing new legislation she is calling the Police Accountability Act. It calls for sweeping changes to the state's police use of force laws.
This is not going to change those split-second decisions that officers must make. There are reasonable protections that officers need in situations like those. And that, my friends, should not change and will not change.
The New York Attorney General says the bill would require police officers to try non-lethal alternatives before using force. It would also establish criminal penalties in cases when grossly excessive force is used on civilians. Tonight, the PBA released a statement saying this sweeping proposal would make it impossible for police officers to determine whether or not we are permitted to use force in a given situation.
Let's think about this for a second. Of course, the new AG in New York wants to actually introduce a policy where the use of force is a last resort. That an officer will need to use everything else to de-escalate the situation before use of force is deemed necessary. Cops have a problem with that because I'm trying to figure this out. So the top cop. The top prosecutor in New York is pretty much telling cops, hey, do everything you can before force is needed. And cops are saying, well, how are we going to do our jobs? If you heard that response, well, if we got to use force as last resort, it's going to be impossible to do our jobs. So you're admitting that all y'all know how to do is enact violence. That's pretty much all you're saying. You're pretty much saying, well, if we can't use fear and intimidation, we're supposed to use our words. You're supposed to use your heads. And again, this is what I'm sitting there saying when it comes to this whole thing, going back to laws that are protecting us. If you really want to protect us, most of us being, I'm just going to go ahead and be specific today, us being African Americans, you have to look at, number one, the police. You have to look at probably the number 2 reason that we deserve more protection than law enforcement does. Because again, if law enforcement, if all they know is violence, if all they know is use of force, if all they know is intimidation, and you take that away from them and they turn to 5-year-olds like, well, what am I supposed to do now? That is a sure sign that things need to change when it comes to law enforcement. Even when you talk about qualified immunity, again, which is another thing that needs to be taken away from. But watch what happens when you sit there and you mention that.
On policing in America, we're taking a closer look at legal protections for thousands of law enforcement officers in this country. And the case of a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran who says he was assaulted by police while entering a VA hospital back in 2016. He's now asking this U.S. Supreme Court to let him sue the officers for allegedly violating his civil rights. And in doing so, roll back decades of qualified immunity for cops. Will they take the case? Here's ABC's Devin Dwyer.
70-year-old Vietnam vet Jose Oliva knew the screening routine at El Paso's VA.
I went to the VA regularly 3-4 times out of the year.
Security camera footage showing him at the checkpoint on his way to the dentist in February 2016. A trip that quickly turned into a nightmare after an officer asked for his ID.
I told him my VA card, my ID is in the bin. And for whatever reasons, he did not like that answer.
The recording didn't capture what was said, but the exchange leading to a physical altercation.
This big guy grabbed my left hand, and with his 2 hands, he jerked my arm as high as he could. Almost simultaneously, as this guy was jerking my hand, he put a chokehold on my throat. Very hard, very hurtful. And I told him, I cannot breathe. Let me go. I cannot breathe.
The officers taking Oliva into custody and citing him with disorderly conduct, a charge that was later dismissed. Attorneys for the officers say they were neutralizing a threat.
You can't look at this one isolated incident in a vacuum. In 2015 in El Paso at the same facility, there was a shooting there.
Yeah, the video looks shocking, but then you have to think, they don't know if Mr. Oliva has dynamite strapped to his chest or he's got a .45 handgun that he's going to just start shooting people indiscriminately.
Oliva's attorneys say the use of force was excessive, permanently damaging his shoulder and injuring one of his ears and throat.
There's just no way any reasonable person can watch that video and think that there was any reason for those VA police to do what they did to Jose.
But a federal appeals court last year dismissed Oliva's case against the cops. Its decision citing a Supreme Court rule since 1971 that sharply limits the right of Americans to sue federal officers under the Constitution. And even if the suit could go forward, the court has also said officers may invoke qualified immunity, an extra protection against personal liability against constitutional violations in most cases, in place for more than 50 years.
Qualified immunity protects officers unless the plaintiff in the case can find a prior court decision with virtually identical facts, holding those facts and conduct unconstitutional.
So if you're a federal officer, I mean, this is like a double high bar.
It is a double high bar. It is a double protection.
Accountability for law enforcement, especially federal officers, is under intense scrutiny nationwide. After scenes like these during last summer's protests for racial justice involving legions of federal agents, many unidentified, performing policing functions normally left to state and local agencies.
Not only are there more agents and special agents and officers, but they are doing more in the way of policing than has typically been the case with regard to our historically very limited federal police apparatus.
20 years ago, there were 88,000 federal officers, most working on the border or in federal prisons. Today, they number more than 132,000. Congress granted those federal officers greater protection from civil lawsuits than their state and local counterparts.
That way they can do their job and not have to be second guessing. We don't want our frontline security officers having to make these type of legal decisions when they're in life or death situations or circumstances.
Critics say the data doesn't back up those claims.
I spent 5 years as a cop. I tend to trust generally in the professionalism of other officers, and I find it very infantilizing when someone says that concerns about possible prospective lawsuits, purely speculative lawsuits, are going to be so strong that those fears are going to keep an officer from doing their job. I just don't buy that.
This officer has threatened me.
For many victims of alleged police abuse, civil claims are the only avenue for justice, and qualified immunity is a major sticking point. A Reuters investigation found police won 43% of federal excessive force cases from 2014 to 2017, invoking qualified immunity. Over the next 3 years, it increased to 56%. A trend some say underscores the need for reform.
The Supreme Court talked about it as a good faith defense. If the officer believed that what they were doing was constitutional, that there should be some manner of protection. But the Supreme Court's desires to protect more and more officers has led them to create a standard that is more and more difficult to meet.
Negotiations in Congress over a sweeping bipartisan police reform bill in honor of George Floyd are now stalled over whether to eliminate qualified immunity.
There are big policy trade-offs when you have an immunity for government officials. If you look at the legislation that Congress is considering, some of it doesn't get rid of qualified immunity entirely. It narrows it. If it's a good faith mistake, we're not going to allow a plaintiff to recover money damages for that. There might be other mechanisms to punish the officer, but that won't be one of them.
More than 24 states are considering their own limits on legal immunity for cops, but Jose Oliva is hoping the Supreme Court will take his case and set a new national standard.
Qualified immunity is basically too broad. It's not specific.
A plea to the justices to expand the ability of Americans to bring claims against cops in federal court.
That doesn't mean that the cases will necessarily be resolved in favor of the plaintiffs or that the government agents will always be viewed as the bad guys. All it means is that we have a neutral process where the claims are fairly adjudicated and decided on their merits.
Fairness now in the spotlight at the Supreme Court, which could decide as soon as Monday on whether to take Oliva's case and a closer look at qualified immunity.
So pretty much, qualified immunity to me is basically an open road for officers to do whatever they want. They can turn around and literally beat your head in, and we'll sit there and claim qualified immunity, because that's what it is. Qualified immunity is supposed to allow the officer to sit there and say, hey, this force was justified. We had no other choice. We did what we had to do to protect ourselves and the safety of others. That's what qualified immunity is for. But let's also be honest. Qualified immunity, as it stands, is a blank statement. Like I said before, look, with law enforcement, they just seem to have more protection for themselves than we do as citizens. And they're supposed to protect and serve us. So you can only imagine that, of course, in that case involving that former veteran, that he has to go out of his way to prove that 3 officers at a VA hospital literally and figuratively overdid it. And he has to now prove it in Congress in order to finally get justice. If this happened to a white person, this would have already been taken care of. There would have been apologies all around. But let's be honest, with qualified immunity, it doesn't need. I mean, let's be honest. If an officer is doing his job properly, his or her job properly, there would be no need for qualified immunity. There wouldn't be. Because why do you need it? If you did exactly what you're supposed to do within the limits of your job, and with the limits of the law, then you don't need qualified immunity. But let's be honest, officers use qualified immunity to get away with a lot of stuff that normally would not be able to happen under a normal set of laws. And that alone is the problem. That's the reason why I hope Democrats don't let go of this in their police reform bill. No, you should push for the removal of qualified immunity. If the cops are doing their job properly, they have nothing to worry about. That's just honesty. That is complete and total honesty. If for the simple fact of the matter that they are doing their jobs properly, that they don't need qualified immunity. Because qualified immunity, for all intents and purposes, from their explanation, is we just don't want to get sued. We just don't want to get sued for doing our jobs. Well, if you do your jobs right and you're within the law, then how can you get sued? It's a double protection. As the journalist had pointed out in the story, it is a double protection. So again, why are we talking about qualified immunity and law enforcement? Because again, this goes back to, where's our bill? Where's our bill that protects minorities, including African Americans? Where's that bill? Because, no disrespect to the COVID-19 hate bill that was just passed. No disrespect. But minorities, black people, have been getting attacked, murdered, mutilated, raped, hanged, burned, castrated, everything else under the sun, mostly by law enforcement. Where's our protection? Where's our bill? Where's our bill that goes into it and tells them that, hey, we deserve just as much protection under the law as other races do? Please, oh please, tell me where that bill is. But again, I know for the simple fact of the matter, for some people, it's going to be asking the very same question. But moving along, guys, I did want to talk about this because, again, if you haven't noticed, they're trying to get people back to work. And some states, including the home state of Tennessee that I live in, unfortunately, because Tennessee is progressively backwards. Tennessee can sit there and call themselves, a forward-thinking city. They're not, because somehow the people who swear up and down they know what they're doing always get elected, and they always screw up royally. Sometimes it just goes downhill administration after administration. But the reason why I'm talking about employment things is that if you haven't noticed lately, a lot of those signs, especially on Facebook, where they talk about, unable to, we're not open, people don't want to work, things of that nature. And you guys have heard me say this on previous podcasts that it's not a fact of people not wanting to work. It's the fact that the pay is crappy. If anything in this pandemic, it has shown a lot of people that they don't want to work for crappy wages. You don't want to kill yourself 40, 80 hours, 40 hours plus a week, and you're making less than $15 an hour. And a lot of people say, well, you should get a better job. Really? The job market is not that good. The pandemic knocked out a lot of jobs that unfortunately may never come back. So a lot of people have either had to take unemployment, which again, when you had the pandemic relief, unemployment at one point was paying better than most jobs, between $7 and $9 an hour. If your unemployment is giving you more money than you would make at your job, then I can understand why you wouldn't work your job, because you realize I am killing myself for less and unemployment's giving me more. So a lot of people sit there and go, well, well, we still keep giving this extra money for unemployment, then people won't work. No. You know how you fix that problem? You pay more. And that's the one thing that businesses will never sit there and say. That the one thing they'll never sit there and say, oh, well, pay more. You mean you're telling me that if we pay more, people will work? Yeah. Wanna know why?
Cash incentives to get the unemployed back to work. Many business owners say their help wanted signs have been out so long they're collecting dust because workers are choosing to collect unemployment instead. So Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont is offering $1,000 to as many as 10,000 people who go back to their old shifts at restaurants and stores. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park joins us now from Greenwich, Connecticut. So, Kathy, tell us, first of all, what's behind this? Why are some people choosing not to go back to work? And are the business owners hopeful that cash incentives could actually lure workers back and maybe ease this worker shortage?
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. As you know, the pandemic dealt a crushing blow to the workforce, and a lot of people ended up leaning on both state and federal unemployment benefits. And the concern now moving forward is that some people will continue to sit on the sidelines, continue to collect the $300 federal check until it expires at the end of the summer. Another concern is childcare. As you know, a lot of parents are starting to get back to work. So for some people, it makes sense for one parent to just stay at home. And then lastly, COVID is still here. We are still in this pandemic, although things are starting to trend in the right direction. And some people in the workforce, they're still hesitant to dive right in because of the fear of potentially getting the virus. But as far as this incentive goes here in Connecticut, the reaction is pretty mixed, because you have some people who say, yes, this will spur up some movement to get people back to work. But then there are people who say, we have offered job security for the better part of the year. Where is our bonus? So you have that twofold reaction there, Joe.
So Connecticut is not alone here, Kathy. What are other states doing to either convince workers to return to their pre-pandemic jobs, or maybe even to try and put some pressure on them to get them back to work?
Well, there are some states like New Hampshire, Montana, Oklahoma. Those states will actually be ending or opting out of the federal unemployment program in the better part of the middle of June. It kind of depends on which state you're in. But as an incentive, they'll do something similar to what they're doing here in Connecticut and offering some sort of bonus for the unemployed who go back to work and stay in that job for an extended period of time, Joe.
All right, Kathy.
Okay, so let's think about this for a second. As you saw, that some states are offering incentives for people to go back to work. We'll give you $1,000 if you stay at work for 90 days. Or, you know, because a lot of other states, most Republican states, are taking away the pandemic bonus on top of unemployment, saying this is going to make people work. This is going to make people, give them a reason to go to work. Problem with that. So your idea of helping people whose jobs may or may never come back, who may have to look at different avenues of trying to make ends meet, you decide that you're going to take away their unemployment and say, okay, now I've taken away your only reason that you were able to get by this far. Now go out there and go back to your job that paid you crappy. Because let's be honest. Let's also be honest, guys. This pandemic has shown a lot of people. I have been saying this for years about the income wage gap. The income wage gap is real. I mean, there are so very few of us out there, especially like in Tennessee. Like in Tennessee, believe it or not, the average median income in Tennessee is somewhere between 48 and 55,000. That's the average median income in Tennessee. 48 to 55. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the average. Keep in mind, for a lot of jobs, it's way lower than that. But the most at some point is probably 54, 55,000 for the average. Do you want to know how many people in Tennessee possibly make above 60,000? Less than 20. Less than 20% make 60,000 and above in Tennessee. Everybody else is somewhere in that 0 to 55,000 salary cap. Now, I know what you probably are all thinking. Yes, we live in, especially if you live in Tennessee, now especially specifically Middle Tennessee, has one of the highest tax brackets in the U.S. But we don't have a state income tax. So because, for some odd reason, we just feel like we don't need to pay a state income tax when honestly the reality of it all is we do. We're going to have to eventually have one. But the thing about it is, bills and everything else have gone up. Your utilities have gone up, your food has gone up, your gas has gone up. If you're paying car notes, chances are they went up, your insurance goes up, everything goes up but your paycheck. And let's also be honest, the minimum wage at $7.29 as it stands won't help anybody. That's below poverty. That's starvation wages. And nobody in Tennessee can live off anywhere from a 7 to 8 to 9 to $10, 12 an hour job and still expect to keep a roof over their head, still expect utilities, still expect to have food. I mean, you're not even going to have the basics. That's the reason why the minimum wage needs to increase. Needs to. That's one. But also, jobs need to pay more. Yes, jobs need to pay more. But jobs, especially here in Tennessee, because companies love coming to Tennessee because, well, one, we're a right to work state. Number two, they can sit there and they can pay people. I mean, think about this for a second. You actually have people out there that are working still in 2021, still working $8 an hour, $9 an hour, $10 an hour jobs. And there are multiple jobs out there like that. Could you imagine working that job and trying to keep an apartment? Have you seen the rent in Tennessee? If you live in Tennessee, let me tell you something. Trying to rent a place in Tennessee right now, you're paying anywhere from at least $1,000 up. If you find anything less than $1,000, you better not tell anybody and you better hold it tight. But almost any other place, $1,000, easy, easy. So again, this is the whole thing I've been saying, that what this pandemic has shown us is the simple fact of the matter is that a lot of things need to change. But inciting people to go to work, especially in places where, and like I said, don't get me wrong, a lot of companies are trying. McDonald's tried it. We're gonna start paying our workers $15, but only at corporate locations. Keep in mind, there are very few corporate locations for McDonald's. Everything else is owned by franchises. Franchisees are not required to raise their prices according to their state laws. Yay, McDonald's tried and failed. Even Amazon. Amazon has raised their pay to $17 an hour. But I feel for those people at Amazon because nothing still has changed. And of course, you still have those other places out there. Costco, which is actually a nice place to work, has raised their minimum wage up to has raised their starting pay up to $18 an hour starting out. I was gonna say Costco, Starbucks, are all doing the same thing. But that's the thing I keep saying. If you set the minimum wage to $15 an hour, the one thing you're gonna sit there and hear and say is just that, well, we can't afford it, or if we pay this, we're gonna have to lose jobs. They say the same thing all the time, guys. If we do this, we're gonna lose jobs. If we do this, we can't hire anybody. No, what they're really saying is, if we do this, we don't get the same amount of profits we used to get beforehand. The money, our bag gets smaller, and honestly, you would think as a business that's what they usually say. If we do this, that'll close our doors. No, it won't. It'll open them. For the simple fact of the matter, it's just that it's just when it comes down to it, businesses don't want to pay more. They want the same output they were getting from employees that gave them record profits last year, but at the same time, employees had to either take on a second job another hustle, or just flat out work themselves to almost where their health fails just to try to make ends meet. What are you guys saying? Average apartment in Nashville is $1,300 for a two bath. Yeah, I'll give you that. You're right. I know I was using 1,000 as a baseline, but yeah, I mean $1,300 a month for a two bath in Nashville. You don't even want to look at. I mean, at that point, it almost makes you want to look at homes. Honestly, it's like if you're gonna be paying that much for an apartment, then your pay should reflect that. It should. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Your pay should reflect that. But also, with the job loss, we do need to talk about universal basic income, which again is another solution to help people make ends meet. And I like the fact that more and more cities are starting to do that.
In major cities across the country say regular direct payments must become a new normal in the United States. The group Mayors for a Guaranteed Income is pushing for cities to establish their own such programs. One of the mayors leading that charge is Newark, New Jersey Democrat Ras J. Baraka. The 51-year-old presented the idea back in March 2019 as a way to help the city's most needy citizens. After pandemic-related delays, the city is ready to begin the Newark Movement for Economic Equity. 400 city residents will take part in the 2-year program. A majority have household incomes at 200% below the poverty level. The recipients will receive $12,000 over the course of the pilot program. Half of those individuals will get the money in $500 monthly payments. The others will receive 4 lump sums of $3,000 paid semi-annually. Organizers hope to prove an economic boost. This will prove an economic boost to the people of Newark. Census data from the last 5 years shows Newark households make less than half the New Jersey statewide average income. Mayor Baraka joins me now from Newark, New Jersey. Mayor Baraka.
Now I just want to stop right there because it just goes into this. Because he's not the first mayor to do it. This was also done in Sacramento. This was also done in Los Angeles as well, in California. That is also another thing that needs to be considered: universal basic income. I have to give what's his face is Andrew Yang. There we go, Andrew Wang. I have to give Yang credit. Yang was the first one, along with Bernie Sanders, to talk about universal basic income. For all those that don't know, universal basic income is basically when you are given a set amount of money, whether it's over a year, over a month, but basically enough to basically get along, to survive, to thrive in an environment to where your jobs may not be there, things of that nature. Kind of similar to automation, to where people talk about automation is going to take over a lot of jobs. It's going to destroy the job, destroy jobs or move jobs overseas, things of that nature. Okay, cool. So how we still help people? Universal basic income. And the thing about universal basic income is previous experiments have worked great. The same people they've actually helped, not only helped them economically, but also helped them in a relationship sense, in a community sense, also within the household. Because let's be honest, guys, in any household, money is always going to be an important factor. It has led to divorces. It has led to the children being affected. It has led to mental problems. It has led to health problems. Imagine if I tell people all the time. I tell people this all the time. The universal basic income theory is if you take money out the equation, everything else does better, which seems to be true. A lot of people have sat there, and a lot of people who have been under those pilot programs have all sat there and said, well, their marriages have been better. The husband or wife doesn't have to take an additional job, which means more time in the home. The kids do better because both parents are there to assist them. It's all around is how that works. So I'm all for universal basic income. Now, will it happen in my state of Tennessee, for example? No. Tennessee will. The one thing about Tennessee, I love Tennessee, but Jesus Christ, if you think for 1 second that they will do anything progressive, you will be waiting a very long time. especially with the idiot Governor Lee right now, because he is everything a Republican dreams to be and everything that a progressive dislikes. So again, and the funny part is, about Governor Lee, he thinks he's doing everything right. But anyway, with universal basic income, guys, it needs to happen. It's bound to happen. Now, it just depends on getting everybody on board because eventually we are going to need something because if anything this pandemic has proven, those same jobs a lot of people are depending on are simply not coming back. Those businesses that were there for the pandemic, that were closer than the pandemic, may never come back. So what else do you expect the American public to do without universal basic income? Now, I will say this: a lot of people have opened doors during the pandemic, opened their own businesses, and took on new ventures, but that's not for everybody. So universal basic income will be the next solution. It just depends on getting everybody in Congress who's already well taken care of. Because whenever you ever seen a broke politician, it's just getting them to agree with it. But that's a whole nother story. But the one other stories I did want to cover, because I did just talk about Amazon. Now I talked about some fact of the matter is just that where is our protection when it comes to African American minorities, especially when you see stuff like this.
A new Amazon facility has now been halted tonight after what was discovered on site in Windsor, Connecticut. Authorities say a seventh noose has now been found. Here's ABC's Ariel Reshef tonight.
Tonight, the FBI and local authorities investigating after a seventh noose was found at an Amazon construction site in Connecticut.
I hope whoever doing this could grow a conscience.
Work on that facility in Windsor now suspended after the alarming discovery. The NAACP releasing this image.
This last incident happening during a lunch break, and so many workers had left the area, so very difficult. But we are working on it. We do have some leads.
Hundreds of workers are on site each day, and the NAACP says many are brought in from out of state.
It's kind of ironic, from Lynchburg, Virginia. They were brought on this site, and a lot of individuals from Florida, Texas, Georgia, from the South have come up here to work on this particular site.
Carlos Best is an iron worker at the location.
Some guys just want to get a paycheck and go home. But personally, out on this job here, I've seen a lot of racism, a lot of things, and it's sad.
Amazon saying we continue to be deeply disturbed by the incidents happening at the construction site.
And Amazon is now offering a $100,000 reward to help catch those responsible.
So let's think about this for a second. Seventh noose? Seventh. Not first, not second. The seventh noose that was found at this construction site for Amazon. And again, where's the protection? I see you see a black iron worker talking about, dude, all I want to do is collect the paycheck and go home. That's it. But imagine you coming to work, and I tell people all the time, imagine you coming into work and you see a noose just hanging there. That noose is symbolic. That noose, for a lot of black people, carries a lot of hate, carries a lot of anger, carries a lot because it steady more reminds us, which is kind of funny. It's kind of funny that, some people out there don't believe that critical race theory should be taught, but at the same time, you see a noose put up, and this is again, you never see a noose not get put up where a black person can't see it. True story. Every time a noose is put up, it's meant there to scare and intimidate black people. But you'll never see a noose not be where a black person isn't. It's meant to be there. And again, that alone right there should tell you, number one, those minorities on that site, I don't blame them for not being there. The seventh noose? So they're telling me that 6 other nooses at any other time have been discovered, but number 7 comes around and now it's a problem. And at a construction site where there's hundreds of people, yeah, I'd be paranoid too. I wouldn't want to go there. I would probably stop working there because they, somewhere along the line, your personal safety has to be considered. And for the simple fact of the matter, it's not okay. It's hell no, it's not okay. And to sit there, and of course, Amazon, we are deeply disturbed by the events that are happening there. why in the blue doggone get out are y'all not turning around and putting security there? Why is there not 24/7 security? Why is there anyone not watching the site? Why are there not, security there to ensure the safety of your workers? We're deeply disturbed. No, y'all need to deeply do something. Because for somebody to go in there 7 times, they were able to go in there 7 times and hang 7 nooses, and nobody's been found. But you're sitting there telling me you don't have security down there 24/7. That's the thing that makes no sense to me. But then again, it goes back to what I said about protections for minorities. Where is our protection? I'm not saying, like, again, this is just simply pointing it out. We have ongoing threats to us on a daily basis. Where's our protection? I'm not saying anything again. I'm not trying to downplay the COVID-19 hate bill because it was done, and I'm glad that it was. But let's also be honest. Asian Americans were able to get something passed through in a matter of days that we as black people are still waiting on decades later, that we just can't seem to get the same love. Tell me if I'm wrong. Please tell me if I'm wrong. That's the way I feel about it. But again, if I'm wrong in this, please feel free to tell me in the comments field. But I'm just saying, I'm not trying to hate on them. I'm simply pointing out that, again, this is one of those things to where explain it. Explain how one side was able to get through faster than the other side. Because I know one way, because they weren't black. Call it what you will. But I wanted to, excuse me, but I actually wanted to get into Kyle Rittenhouse because, his tail finally showed up in jail. And even though this was pretrial stuff, it's still important.
Kyle Rittenhouse facing a judge in person for the first time after authorities say he shot 2 people to death in August and seriously injured another. The violence unfolding during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, following the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Police say Rittenhouse, who was 17 years old at the time, traveled from his home in Illinois to Kenosha with an AR-15 style rifle. Graphic video shows a group of people chasing him. He then falls and begins shooting into the crowd. Cell phone footage then shows him walking past police lines with his hands up and his rifle over his shoulder, even as protesters yelled he had shot someone. Rittenhouse later turned himself into authorities, claiming he wanted to protect businesses from the demonstrations. He has appeared in court a number of times since he was arrested, but virtually because of COVID-19 protocols. Rittenhouse is out on $2 million bail.
We lost a son. His mom and I lost our son. And how would you feel if the killer of your son is just able to walk free?
He's pleaded not guilty to charges including homicide and reckless endangerment. His trial is scheduled to begin in November.
Yes, let us not forget Kyle Rittenhouse, the guy who decided to go from his own city to another city to defend businesses from protesters. Because keep in mind, this was a part of the earlier time this year, which feels like this year, even though we're getting almost to the midpoint of 2021. But let's not forget earlier this year about the protests and demonstrations that did happen, especially surrounding minorities being attacked by law enforcement, in which, yes, some places did get looted. But this one individual, Kyle Rittenhouse, said, no, it is not going to happen. It is not going to happen in a city. Wow, that did not go the way I intended. It was almost like God said, nope. But anyway, so this Mr. Rittenhouse took it upon himself and said, not in my city, and decided to go travel to another city with a weapon that he was not supposed to have at the time, and decided to go defend billion-dollar corporations who have insurance for this type of thing. And try to sit there and say, well, I was going up there to defend businesses with a gun. Because yes, that's who the mob was mad at. The mob was mad at businesses because of the simple fact of the matter that, well, let's just be honest, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. So again, he should be tried as an adult, which he will. He's 18 years old, so he will be tried as an adult, and that case will be happening. What are you guys saying? They should go after his mother too. She took him. Well, she is being brought up on aiding and abetting. It's a lesser case, but she is being brought up on that. So you are right. She will definitely be tried. It's just interesting when it comes to Kyle Rittenhouse that a lot of people see him as a hero. I don't see anybody as a hero that traveled across the state line with a weapon to go defend businesses that have never heard of you. I've never understood that. It's like you simped for a business that didn't even know you were alive. But again, let's be honest. He murdered protesters. He should face the charges. He should, and hopefully he's found guilty. But I did, like I said, I know I talked about Tennessee a lot, guys, but only because I wanted to show this. Which again, Tennessee. If you ever take anything from me when I say Tennessee is progressively backwards. I cannot stress this enough. Only because Tennessee, much like Tennessee, much like a lot of these other states, are taking conservative views, especially when it comes to transgenders. Just this year, Tennessee is the second state behind Arkansas to basically approve legislation that bans gender-confirming treatment for young minors, which means for those minors out there that are getting treatment for their gender changes is now banned in Tennessee, which again makes no sense because at this point, no doctor in Tennessee has yet provided hormone therapy to any younger children before they enter puberty. Since the Endocrine Society, which is a medical profession, which is a medical society, has sat there and said that hormone therapy should not be given to anybody until they enter puberty. Which again, there is no case in Tennessee that happens. So it's, again, they're following Arkansas's law. And also keep this in mind, that's not the only thing he signed. He also sat there and signed off on legislation that requires businesses and government facilities open to the public to post a sign if they let transgender people use multi-person bathrooms, locker rooms, or changing rooms associated with their gender identity. He also signed a legislation last week that puts schools in districts let me read that again. That he signed legislation last week that puts schools and their districts at risk of losing civil lawsuits if they let transgender students or employees use multi-person bathrooms or locker rooms that do not reflect their sex at birth. Which goes to show you, I personally think Republicans have it in. I mean, just like I think that a lot of people have it in for black people, I think that honestly Republicans have it in for transgenders. I see nothing wrong with transgenders. I love everybody under the LGBTQ umbrella because they're just as human. They're human. They're just as human as us. They laugh. They laugh. They cry. They experience life just the same way we do. Just maybe have a different perspective. They just may have a different perspective. That is fine. You are allowed to be a boy, a girl, to be recognized by him or her or they pronouns. Binary or non-binary, it's however you live your life. Just tell me how should I acknowledge you. That's what I always say to people. That's what I always say to people of those types of characteristics. Let me know how I should acknowledge you so that way we all cool. Because I believe in this rule. You're nice to me, I am nice to you. You be a dick to me, I will be a dick to you. I give what you give me. Simple. But in the case of Governor Lee, I'm going to be honest, they have it in for the LGBTQ community, much like they have it in for the African American community. That, for the simple fact of the matter is, what are all these laws and registrations actually good for? Because it's just like Governor Lee also signing a bill in Tennessee that sits there and says that, and by the way, if schools teach critical race theory, their federal funding gets pulled. Yes, it's amazing how much we don't want to teach real history that we will threaten schools with pulling their funding because some white people out there don't want their kids learning the truth. Oh, that history is not always clean, that the white settlers weren't always good-faring folk. No, they were a murderous bunch. They don't believe me? Look at the real reason why we have Thanksgiving. Look at the real reason. Look at the real reason why Native Americans have been displaced. Look at the real reason at Tulsa. Look at the real reason at the church bombings in Mississippi. Look at the real reason that we actually did have internment camps that were housing Japanese Americans. Oh, but we don't want to talk about that history. But we want to let them know that everybody got along. That from this period up until now, everybody got along. No. It doesn't work that way, Governor Lee. And it doesn't work that way that, again, he's trying to, like I said before, I see a lot of people just wanting to leave Tennessee, and I can't blame them because Tennessee is progressively backwards. Tell me if I'm wrong. But moving right along, guys, I did actually want to get these last two stories before we get to our feel-good segment, and this is still funny that I know I haven't talked about him in a while, but President Trump, former President Trump, Dorito, doesn't like the fact that the AG is launching a criminal investigation into his Trump organization. Yes, I said criminal because it has moved from looking into certain things to criminal charges. And of course, Dorito wasn't happy.
Trump is lashing out after the New York Attorney General announced her office is pursuing a criminal investigation of the Trump organization. In a statement posted to his website, Trump said in part, quote, "There is nothing more corrupt than an investigation that is in desperate search of a crime." The Attorney General's office is working with the Manhattan District Attorney and says the criminal probe is an expansion of a civil investigation that started in 2019. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now. So, Monica, first of all, what more are we learning about the investigation and how these offices, the AG and the DA, will be working together?
Well, Joe, we're learning now this is really sort of about information sharing, and there are two new lawyers who have been detailed to work together from the New York Attorney General's office and the Manhattan DA to now collaborate on this, what was once a civil probe into the Trump organization that has now ventured into the criminal. That doesn't mean, though, that there's any kind of smoking gun necessarily or any potentially new evidence that has moved this to that, but it's the opening of a lane where there could be some potential criminality here. And that question is really the one that remains very much unanswered. And legal experts are the ones to say, we don't yet know the implications, but this is certainly not good news for the former president, who is blasting this and calling it, quote, corrupt in a more than 900-word statement. So we still don't know a lot about this, but the fact that they came out and publicly said they were going to join forces and see what more they could uncover indicates there are potential new avenues here for investigation. Again, with the word criminal being the one that raises the most eyebrows, though we don't yet know what has pushed this forward, Joe.
Yeah, Monica, in that statement, the former president seemed to reference his longtime, now former attorney Michael Cohen, referring to him as a, quote, lying, discredited lowlife. We're hearing from Cohen. What's he saying about this investigation now?
And their relationship really has obviously soured over the last couple of years after he was one of the former president's closest confidants. But now Michael Cohen, in an interview on MSNBC last night, had some predictions for what he thinks will happen next. Take a listen.
I think Donald Trump is going to flip on all of them. What do you think about that, including his children? I really believe that Donald Trump is going to turn around. You always get shocked when I say things, Joy. I really believe that Donald Trump cares for only himself, and he realizes that his goose is cooked.
And of course, Michael Cohen did plead guilty to not telling the truth and has served time for that. So that's important to remember as well in all of this. But it's unclear where this goes. Of course, it's the former president's sons, and namely Eric Trump, who had been put in charge of the Trump organization. And for his part, Eric Trump hasn't offered any detailed comment. The only thing we've really seen from allies of the Trump orbit is they are now trying to go after the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who has made some comments in the past that were quite critical of Donald Trump while he was in office, guys.
Monica, the Trump organization has been under civil investigation for 2 years. What could this criminal probe mean for the company now?
That's the million-dollar question. And this is really, we should remind people, it covers a huge range. This is not just about some of the certain properties and allegations of insurance fraud or tax fraud. There's a whole litany of other things that are being considered. So as the Trump organization goes forward and tries to navigate, of course, we know the former president essentially lives at his own properties that are connected to the Trump organization. There's plenty of implications there as well, but we simply just don't know how far-reaching this is. And again, we have to remind people there are a lot of parallel investigations here, and that's why the former president has so much exposure. In addition to this probe, of course, there are certain lawsuits related to his involvement in the January 6th insurrection and also in Georgia, of course, after he lost the November election. Joe.
Well, how else can I put this? I did go ahead and say it. If Trump is still not in jail by 2024, he will certainly be running for office again. But criminal investigation means that that means that, especially for them, keep in mind the Manhattan DA, which is different from the New York Attorney General, are both looking into this now. And keep in mind, the Manhattan DA has been looking into the Trump organization since Trump's last 2 years in office. So keep in mind, they now have his tax returns. They were able to finally get his tax returns from the IRS, and they've been combing through them. And what was supposed to be an inquiry is now a criminal investigation, which again we knew, and it's a defined irony. A corrupt businessman, failed corrupt politician, failed corrupt president is going to call an investigation into corruption in his organization as corruption. Teapot, have you met Kettle? It's just, I laugh at this, number one, because it's funny that Trump cannot just hop on Twitter and go on this tirade. He has to give out a written or typed up statement now. I find that amazing, and I find that comfortable, because no longer are we being, the one thing social media did right, was ban Trump. You took away his platform, and I am grateful for that. Although I think Facebook may turn around and give it back to him anytime soon, but hopefully they won't. But again, it's funny that they go to Michael Cohen, and of course Michael Cohen's gonna know. He was the one singing like a canary, and he's sitting there saying, "Oh, Trump's gonna flip on his children." Maybe, but at the same time, what's to keep them from flipping on him? I mean, if you take the end of any mob or gangster movie, I mean, the only people, I mean, either you turn rat or you turn up in jail. I mean, happened to The Godfather. But again, guys, it's just to be all funniness aside, it needs to happen. We've been saying how corrupt Trump is. The fact that he's a failed businessman, a con man. He's still actually charging the Secret Service, because I feel sorry for the guys, because I don't know for a lot of people that know this, but when you're no longer the president, your secret security detail goes with you. So I feel sorry for the bunch of guys that have to sit here and still watch Dorito. Number one, because you're stuck watching a former president. Number two, Dorito is charging the United States basically rent, because again, the security service has to stay wherever he stays. So of course, he stays at his hotel, / golf resort. Of course, the Secret Security staying there. He charges them for them staying there. So he is still making money off of them. That alone should tell you guys everything of how Dorito does stuff. That he still finds a way to somehow still make money off things, and it is disturbing how he does it. So again, it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens. I still think there'll be criminal charges. I think that, if they get one of his children, it is going to be definitely interesting. But it's just going to be fun to watch. I just can't find a way to say it. It'll just be fun to watch. But the last story I got, guys, is very interesting, because I want to show, give me a second here, because I want to show this memorable picture of white privilege in its greatest form. Remember this couple? Remember this couple during the protest? This protest that happened in St. Louis? Remember the protest that happened in St. Louis, and this memorable couple right there of a guy holding an AR style rifle and his wife holding a gun. Like, these kids have not got off our lawn yet. Now, remember this couple that was sitting there holding guns, pointing them at Black Lives Matter protesters and things of that nature, and how they became famous with Trump saying that, you know, these are true American patriots and things of that nature. Now, you would think that would be the end of it, because they did actually get penalized, and they did actually have to pay fines. No, the husband, mind you, is running for office, and I cannot make this up. This is his campaign.
When the angry mob came to destroy my house and kill my family, I took a stand against them. Now I'm asking for the privilege to take that stand for all of us. I will never back down. Our nation is under attack. Big tech, big business, the swamp in D.C. are all working together to destroy our God-given freedom, our culture, and our heritage. When was the last time a politician defended you, defended America, stood between you and the mob? We need defenders. But all we get is dividers. Every day they teach us to hate each other. Left versus right, black versus white, rich versus poor. This is a tactic to destroy us. But we are all Americans. We are Missourians. Our nation, our state, our homes are worth defending. Our freedoms are worth defending. I can promise you one thing, that when the mob comes to destroy our homes, our state, and our country, I will defend them. I will never back down. My name is Mark McCloskey, and I'm running for the United States Senate to defend our homes, the great state of Missouri, and this great nation. I have always been a Republican, but I've never wanted to run for office. When the fascist mob came to my door, it woke me up. I saw what the future of America will be if we don't all stand up right now and defend our rights. Mark my words, the mob is coming for all of us. Cancel culture, the poison of critical race theory, the lie of systemic racism, backed up by the threat of mob violence, attacks on the Second Amendment, erosion of election integrity, are all intentionally designed to destroy all we hold near and dear. Missouri is not and must never become a socialist state. You can count on me to defend our God-given constitutional rights as I've been defending them for over 40 years. Your right to keep and bear arms, freedom of speech, to own and defend your own private property, and all the constitutional and God-given rights will be safe with me. Missouri needs bold politicians who can stand up to the fury of the lefts and Marxists. Somebody who won't run or hide or quit when the going gets tough. I promise you, I will never stop fighting for you. This is why I've traveled through our great state and this country as a spokesperson for President Trump. Missouri represents the best of America. We are hardworking, good-spirited, God-fearing people with a drive to succeed. We are farmers, small business owners, moms and dads, patriots, and we will fight together for our God-given freedoms. My name is Mark McCloskey. I will defend the people of Missouri. You have my word. I will never back down.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know the lie. Look, hang on a second, because I was trying not to laugh. I didn't mute my mic while that was playing, so I had to hold back a lot. Oh wow, that almost had me crying. Number one, it is really easy to be a Republican politician. It is. I have been saying this to everybody I know, that, again, I will never be Republican. Republicans don't love black people. They don't love women. They just love old white men and money. That's all the Republican Party knows. But I have sat there and said this many a times. The Republicans need to have people of color. Because I've said that my girlfriend and my friends have all heard me say this. that if I turn around tomorrow and I start talking Republican talking points and pushing everything that all this BS they're pushing out there, I'll be on Fox News by Monday. No lie. They will have. I'll be right next to douchebag Tucker Carlson, and they'll sit there and say, "Well, what do you know? As you were an outstanding black man, oh, they'll bump me up, and you don't think that can happen? Look at Candace Owens. Look at Jesse Peterson. Um, those 1776 twins that are on YouTube. Trust me, it can happen. Now, why is that relevant? It's relevant because guys like this, him, Mr. I look like I go to the country club and have too many crab cakes guy, next to suburban housewife who looks like she will shoot anybody on the lawn because she comes from a racist background. Again, it is amazing that this man is different from this man down here. This man, he's different. You know, they aren't the same. Now keep in mind, that in itself, guys, when I sit there and say this man doesn't match this man, because this man is now trying to appeal to his state. This man is exactly who he says he is. He is a guy that lives on the same street as the governor because it's a gated community. This man wants to believe that the America that he believes in is under attack. And I have been saying this entire time. This is how Republicans get people. Republicans get people because, let's be honest, Republicans out there who are Republican or are conservative, for a good number of them, are not educated. They will watch Fox News. They will avoid minorities. They will believe that the America that they believe in is lost. They'll believe in all these things because you know why? You know why? Because you hear it on Republican ads. The poison of critical race theory, the signs for Black Lives Matter and defund the police, which looks like in a defunct neighborhood, and he's walking through it like he's a Lone Ranger. The whole idea that you see Representative Cori Bush, who also did speak out, and I think it's kind of interesting, Cori Bush, who's also from that very same state, because it's very subliminal programming. They put certain things in there to make you think of negatives. Like, he sat there and said, well, we got to defend against the mob. But they never say Black Lives Matter. We have to defend against those that would hurt America. But he never says those that think differently from them. He doesn't say all that. But the product placement in those ads will speak volumes. Like, I must have watched that ad like 40 times. I watched that ad 40 times because, again, Republicans always want to give this down home, I'm one of you guys. I am Americana, if you will. They always do that because that's how they connect. It's how you fool voters. It's how you get people thinking, well, I'm not a politician. Yes, because that's how Trump got elected. Trump got elected because he said, I'm not a politician. And a lot of people at the time did not like Hillary for reasons beyond my comprehension, although she was probably the most qualified person at the time to be president, and they chose a failed reality star. Why? Because he sat there and said what he wanted to say and got away with it, because he sat there and said, I am not a politician, I will fight for you guys, and because I give off this facade of being a businessman, that I can do America the same way. And no, he did exactly America the same way he does all of his businesses. Run them into the ground and claim bankruptcy and then come out smelling like a rose while leaving all of us holding the bag. Except you cannot put the United States of America on a bankruptcy case. And in the case of this man, again, I'm not surprised about this. I mean, realistically, guys, I am just not surprised about this. I mean, for the simple fact of the matter is, you're not going to sit there and tell me that this man, the same man who swore up and down people were going to kill him, is the same man that's now going to stand against the mob. And I'm just saying, the placement in that, the placement is what makes the difference. And if you don't believe this person's not going to be able to get into Congress, In his home state of Missouri, yes, he can. Why? Because education. I can go into a whole other thing. I can go to a whole nother discussion of what happens when you take education, when you stop promoting critical thinking, when you stop promoting critical and logical thinking, when you stop promoting higher education or trade jobs in that situation, when you stop promoting those things, watch how the environment around that area just stops. And then people start going to the basics. He held on to his religion, God-given freedom, the right to bear arms. He did all the conservative old talking points. He did. Why? Because there are some people who are going to sit there and go, that guy gets it, instead of seeing right through his BS. So either way, 2022, which is the midterm elections, which is just next year, is going to be very interesting. So, with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and go to our feel-good segment, because like we do usually do on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are sometimes doom and gloom, sometimes really depressing things of that nature. But like I said, it's the weekend. Unfortunately, if you're in Nashville, it is freaky 90 degrees outside. So if you're like me, you like the winter, but you hate the summer, you don't want to go outside right now, because I've got it like 68. I've got it like 68 in this apartment right now, and I don't even want to go outside. But eventually got to, because a man's got to eat and it's cheat day. But anyway, we do want to leave you with a smile on your face. We do want to leave you guys with a good sense and restore some faith in humanity. And let's do it with the NBA for a story that's not about LeBron James.
Feel-good play of the day. A big surprise for a group of students from none other than the Utah Jazz basketball team. The team pledging to fund a full four-year college scholarship to a group of Utah high school students. So take a look as the players share the good news.
Well, I wanted to congratulate you on being selected for the Utah Jazz scholarship.
You're joking.
Not at all, man. I just want to say congratulations. You've been chosen to receive the Utah Jazz scholarship.
It's all yours. Congratulations. Yeah, no cap.
You're lying.
No, I promise you, I wouldn't.
I love no cap, you know, that's the cool way to say it. I'm not joking. Ain't no joke. This is real. You know, they're going to be giving out one scholarship for each preseason and regular season victory the team had before the All-Star break. These were the first 30 scholarships. They won 55 games this season, everybody, so 25 more to go, and they have a big playoff game coming up. So.
And I thought that was cool, just because, like I said before, you know, an NBA team is actually, especially the Utah Jazz, because if you've been following the NBA, I'm surprised the Utah Jazz are actually #1 seed. But anyway, I love the fact that they actually went out and gave scholarships out to very deserving individuals, because I've always said this about college. Yeah, if you can go, that's great, but let me not forget about trade schools out there, because they are just as lucrative. Being a plumber, contractor, electrician, things of that nature, it's still acceptable. But again, if you still want to go to college, there's nothing wrong with that. And I like the fact that these kids are now taken care of to where they don't have to worry about, you know, leaving school with debt. But it's just a feel-good story. It's like, you know, and I've said this before, and I used to say it again, that the fact that you can do something for somebody and it helps them out in the long run, and you do it just because you want to, it's a wonderful feeling. But the next story I got, guys, I actually did talk about this earlier this week, about this I almost say 3-year-old kid, this third grader who, man, he can, I'll just play the video.
Mornings at Bates Elementary School begin with announcements.
Good morning, students and staff. Please
followed by the national anthem.
Oh,
but this isn't a recording. On this day, it's being sung live by third grader DeCorey Johnson.
For the ramparts we walk.
Where did you learn to sing like that? Where'd you get that voice?
On my dad's side, when I was 3 years old, me and him used to harmonize.
DeCorey's rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner went viral. The response coming as no surprise to DeCorey's parents.
I just thank God every day, every time I hear that voice.
Well, I'm no singer, but did you know that when I was in school, I did the morning announcements for a while?
You did?
I did. I was the guy that did the announcements, but we didn't have a singer. We could have used someone like you.
Thank God I wasn't born back then. Thank God.
DeCory hopes to use his big voice for even bigger plans.
In the home of the brave.
Do you know how that makes people feel when you sing that?
Yes. It's a blessing, you know. A really blessing.
Boy, you sing. I was impressed. Third grade, he sing like that. Well, you know he sung in the church. Let's be honest, y'all. Y'all know he sung in the church. You were expecting a church piece to come up when he sings like that. I'm like, I'll tell you right now, every birthday party he goes to, he gonna be the only one singing, because at that point it's gonna be like, well, let the boy sing, because. Can you imagine trying to sing? Can you imagine him saying grace? I'm just saying, the boy got talent. That day, you know what they say in Coming to America. That boy good. That boy good. I mean, but I like the fact of just the joy that he had. I mean, a third grader, and just the joy out of it. He's like, I just like to sing. Boy, I hope that young man keeps that joy in his heart as he grows up, because whoo, boy, you going places. I always like seeing that natural joy, especially out of kids. Kids just have that just happiness about them, that they're doing something that makes other people happy. I love that. At the same time, I just want to sit there and tell that child, hold on to it. Because, you know, as you become an adult, I hope you stay the same way. I really hope you do. But that voice, again, the voice from a third grader. If I heard him singing, I'm just gonna walk off. If I'm in the choir, I'm just gonna sit down and just pick up my Bible. Like, you know what, you got this. I'm gonna just sit down and just wait for the sermon at this point. But anyway, the last story I got, guys, as I get too far ahead of myself, the last story I got is I always say about never stop learning. A great-grandmother earns a college degree at 78 years old. And that's actually her picture there, Mrs. Cunningham, who earns her PhD in liberal studies at 78 years old. And again, I have always sat there and said this, you are never too old to actually follow your dreams, to actually go up and accomplish what you want to do. And that's exactly what Miss Cunningham did, because this is her PhD. Keep in mind, PhD. And for all those that don't know, that is the pinnacle of what you can get. And at 78 years old, because she actually went back, she actually already had her master's, and then it was kind of funny that her children had told her that, hey, you should go ahead and pursue your PhD, and which she did at 78 years old. And I know at 78 years old, that's her family actually pictured there, but at 78 years old, to go in and go get your PhD again, that's saying a lot. Even so more that a lot of people believe that, you know, a lot of people honestly believe that, you know, once you hit a certain age, that's it. No, it shouldn't be. You're as young as you feel. To this day, where I work out in the gym, although it doesn't look like I work out in the gym, because, you know, hey, I'm trying. I mean, my shoulders and my arms really ain't, and my chest ain't really where I want to be. But hey, I like working out in the gym. So anyway, the reason why I'm saying this story, that you're never too old to work out. There is a guy there at my gym, 72-year-old retired Army Ranger. This guy has more cuts than an American deli, and you can't tell he's 70 up. And he says it all the time. I'm retired, but I still want to keep in shape. And this man runs circles around me. He bench presses more than me. He lifts more than me, and he's like, keeps me young. Keeps me young, and it keeps my wife entertained. And I was like, okay. But at 70 years old, he's happy. At 78 years old, she's got her degree. Age ain't, to be quite honest, age is nothing. You shouldn't feel like the moral that I take from those stories, guys, you should never feel like your age is pretty much like when you hit 50, that's it. Age should be a celebration, not a dead stop. It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm 55, I can't do this anymore. Like, for me, I want to make sure that I'm still doing all the stuff. I want to say I would like to be podcasting well into my 80s, 90s for how long I'm going to be here. I like to sit there and say I'm still going to work out. I'm still going to, keep learning, keep taking on new things. Because if you work in the IT department, you're going to run into a lot of people who are 60, 40, 50, 60 years old and up that will drive you nuts because they stop learning. Yes, I know I'm talking to a few IT people out there because they all understand that pain of when you try to explain the difference between a Microsoft Explorer and Chrome and Google Chrome, and they sit there and say, "Well, I don't know which one I got." You know my pain. Or if they don't know if they got an iPhone or Android, you know my pain. But that's a reason to never stop learning, to never stop growing. Because again, just because you're old doesn't mean you stop growing. Just means that you just need to keep pushing yourself. Find that reason, because if you learn, you're still growing, and if you're still learning, you never get old. Take it from a 70-year-old that just got a PhD. Take it from a third grader that has learned joy at such an early age that it's contagious. But boy, he gonna be some when he grows up, especially in that church. Because hey, like I said, if you sing with him in that church, you'll probably stop. Anyway, with that being said, guys, that's really our podcast here for today, guys. So I do thank everybody for watching, who tuned in, who liked, who shared the video. I certainly appreciate it. Before I do get out of here, some shameless plugging I gotta do before I leave. The link at the bottom, if you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for my Facebook and YouTube groups for How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and the Off Limits Podcast. My podcasting schedule still hasn't changed, guys. I still do the midweek review of How the Frack We Got Here every Wednesday night from 8:30 to 10. My Get Bit podcast covering video games, anime, comic books, and superhero television, which we just did yesterday from 8:30 to 10. Of course, from 10 a.m. to noon, which you're currently watching now, the weekend edition of How the Frack We Got Here. And a little bit later tonight, definitely is going to happen tonight. I know I've kind of been slacking off on this podcast. I apologize. But we definitely will have one tonight, starting a little bit later at 9 o'clock, because the subject matter that I have for this podcast is going to be interesting. I do mean interesting. So, with that being said, of course, the Host Podcast will be starting tonight at 9 o'clock and will run to 11 o'clock. So, all of my shows can be found at the link tree at the bottom. Copy and paste there to let everybody know what you like. Let me not forget my boy Vaughn, who also shared my podcast. I certainly appreciate him. Vaughn, Big VZA Dot on Facebook, which he does do his podcast. He does his VSTs every Sunday, his RAFs every Tuesday, and I think he'll have a surprise VST or a Falcon around throughout the week. Definitely go to his Facebook page at BigVZA Dot to see exactly where you can definitely see his shows and things of that nature. With that being said, guys, I still do have my travel page, Uncle Obi's Adventures and More. Reach out to me, William Buchanan, on Facebook, or Uncle Obi's Adventures and More on Facebook to let me know your travel needs. I do have to now regretfully announce that the referral fee may be going away for a while, just because it has definitely helped me and got me a lot of business. But it will be going away at the end of this month. So at the end of May will be the end of the referral fee, in which I give $100 out to anyone that refers anybody from me to travel and they book. So that actually promotion will be ending at the end of May. I will bring it back at one time in the future. But for now, let's see. Today's the 22nd. You have 8 days. 8 days left to take advantage of that referral fee. So if you do know somebody that's traveling, whether it's across town, across states, or across the pond, send them to me, and as long as they book with me, you, my friend, will get $100. And right now, there's still not a limit on referrals, because honestly, a lot of individuals out there who are not traveling but did actually refer people to me did actually get a nice little payday. But I only love paying it back forward, because I do believe in returning karma, a good karma, when it comes back to me. So with that being said, guys, last thing I'll sit there and say, please be careful about with COVID-19 out there, with the coronavirus. Yes, it's still out there. Yes, a lot of us have either received 1 or 2 shots of the vaccine right now, but I still say this: please, oh please, take precautions. The reason why I say this: if you know you're going to an area where it's all right to wear a mask, it is completely okay to wear a mask for now, because you should be preventative, you should be cautious, you should be all these things. Why? Because right now we don't know how many people got vaccinated. So it only makes sense to protect yourself the best way you know how. And it's not weird that it's weird that you're the only one in the crowd wearing a mask. Don't feel weird because again, you're being proactive while a lot of people are being lax. Especially downtown Nashville right now. So, with that being said, aside from that, guys, like I said before, the one thing I'll say about how the Frack we got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not out here trying to change minds. We're not trying to persuade you. We are simply providing you all the facts and allow you to make up your own mind. Because we do a lot better as a society once we're informed. When we're uninformed, we get idiots like Trump. When we're informed, we elect our first Madam Vice President who is black. I'm still hoping for Michelle. Still hoping for Michelle as president 2024. But anyway, with that being said, guys, thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on playback, please comment if it's live. And I usually say this at the end of all my podcasts. At the end of every podcast we have Frack guy here. The best thing you can do for somebody is to lighten up their day. If you have the ability to turn around and make somebody smile, brighten up their day, do something for them. Just do something that just a random act of kindness that you could do for somebody without expecting anything back. If you could do that, do it. The world itself could use so much more of that. Like I said, just be like that third grader that likes to sing. But anyway, with that being said, guys, hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And like I said before, take care of each other and we'll get through this. Peace!